It means it's not a choice. No one is going to choose to walk down a road less traveled, be bullied, be harassed, possibly be murdered. Murder rates are up for transgender people more than they've ever been. They're not going to choose that path.
My name is Linda Lorelle, and I'm asking you to have the courage to listen with an open mind to all of our voices, because our voices matter. This episode is brought to you by BMW of West Houston.
Hi, this is Robert Ory, the 7-time NBA champ, also known as Big Shot Bob. BMW of West Houston has provided me and my family with the best service and the best experience for years. BMW has been there for me and my family for years, so much so that it has convinced my wife to switch over from a former brand to BMW, and she loves it. BMW has been the car to drive. It is the ultimate driving experience.
Hi, everybody. It's Linda Lorelle, and this is our Voices Matter podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us for this episode. As I record this, we are a couple of days away from Thanksgiving 2022. And like so many of you, I am counting my blessings and am truly thankful for so many things in my life. I am also thinking about those families who will gather this year without their loved ones because they were taken by brutal hate and violence. I'm thinking of the horrific mass killing that happened at the Q Club in Colorado Springs, and the fact that it took place during Transgender Awareness Week. It is so difficult for me, and I'm sure for millions of others, to understand this level of hate and vitriol and violence against this community and any person who is simply trying to just be who they are. I had the great privilege to meet and interview a man who has a courageous story. He is a transgender man. His name is Liam Paschall. As I was thinking about what I wanted to post this week, I thought resharing Liam's story would be appropriate because his message is an important one for all of us to hear. I am thankful for Liam. I am thankful that he has the bravery to speak out, stand in his truth, and share his story. I ask that you have the courage to listen. Liam, it is so wonderful to see you and to welcome you back to our Voices Matter podcast.
I am thrilled and honored to be back here with you again. So thank you for having me.
Well, of course. And so the reason that I wanted to have you back, we were just chatting before I started recording, and you posted the most heartfelt post last week on International Transgender Day of Visibility. And it literally brought me to tears. And I reached out to you because the last time you were on the show, we talked about the fact that you are a transgender man, but that wasn't the focus of the conversation. You were on with some other folks. And so I really wanted to have more of a deeper conversation about your personal story and experience and why it is so important for you to speak out about this and to just be who you are. And sometimes that's a great cost to yourself. So my first question is, what do you want people to know about being a transgender man that they probably don't understand?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I teach this in trainings at the company I'm with now and at other companies as well, it's important to understand that there's a difference in biological sex and gender identity, right? There's a difference in gender expression and anatomical sex. And people tend to get that very confused, right?
Yes.
And as much as those things are related, they're not dependent upon each other. And so, let's explain what that is. So biological sex is the sex that you are assigned at birth. Correct. And, that's male or female typically, but we also have intersex individuals who make up, I would say, about the same number of people in the world as we have red-haired individuals. So there are also intersex people that, they don't fit neatly into those boxes of male or female, whether it's based on their chromosomes, their genital presentation, their reproductive tissues, or some combination of those things. And I think that, a lot of people don't understand that either. And long ago, when babies were born, I remember, reading stories about the doctor and the parents of this intersex child making a decision right away. Oh, this is a girl or this is a boy. Let's, go ahead and do surgery and make sure that they grow up as that particular sex that we say they are, not giving them the opportunity to grow up a bit and really be able to determine the gender of the child. But that's changed quite a bit. But yeah, that's absolutely biological sex.
So the gender piece of it is the societal, it's how you identify, correct?
Absolutely. So it's how you in your head really think about yourself. It's that when you think about it, it's a chemistry that really composes you and sort of how you interpret what that means. It's our psychological sense of self, of gender, right? Every person has a gender identity, and it may or it may not match their sex assigned at birth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in the post that you did last week, you said you showed some pictures of yourself as a young girl and some pictures of your surgery. And you said something to the effect of, the little girl that you see in these photos it's not who I am. So tell me about this post and what you were saying and what was your goal in sharing that very personal message.
So, for the longest time, I think people have kind of questioned me a little bit about, coming out as trans was one thing, but putting it out on social media, specifically LinkedIn, is that the right thing to do, right? Are you jeopardizing your career? Are you causing yourself to lose valuable connections and things like that? And for me, number one, it's a matter of making people see the real me, right? It's who I am. And I don't need to hide that from anyone, whether it's personal or professional connections. Is there a fear, obviously, of my career possibly being impacted at some point? Sure. But I also don't want to work for an employer who would feel the need to, say, we don't want you here just because you're transgender. The reason for the post is sort of twofold. So one, it was, Transgender Day of Visibility was coming up, and there's a ton of anti-trans and anti-LGBT legislation that's constantly, being introduced and being passed into laws in the U.S. And so I wanted to really speak up and let people see this is what it's like for a transgender person. Now, all of our stories are not the same. I had complications, obviously, with my gender-affirming top surgery. But for me, growing up as a child, in that picture that you saw with the dress and the hair and the shoes, I was so lost during that time. I didn't know what it meant to be transgender. I had never heard the word. There were no people on television at the time other than maybe what you saw on a show like Jerry Springer. And let's face it, that's not a positive, anything that you want to really look at and think, okay, this is what I am. So for me, it was just, I don't feel comfortable in this body. When I look at myself in the mirror, I feel like I'm almost like an alien being. And I feel like that I've been wronged to such a degree that I don't know that I even want to be here anymore. And growing up in a very small town, I was raised by my grandmother. When I got older and I figured out what it meant to be transgender, and back then it was called transvestite, which is now a derogatory term, I knew that if I even thought about uttering those words to a family member, to a friend, that I could be bullied, harassed, even killed. And I didn't want to put myself in that situation. And so that post, again, was twofold, making people aware of what it is to be transgender, what it means. It's not a choice. No one is going to choose to walk down a road less traveled, be bullied, be harassed, possibly be murdered. Murder rates are up for transgender people more than they've ever been. They're not going to choose that path. And two, just to let people know, listen, we need to be conscious and aware of the trans people in our lives and what they're going through. And we need to be there for them and make sure that they know they have our support.
When someone approaches you in a negative way,
Mm-hmm.
can you give us an example of something like that and how you handled it in the moment and what you might have been able to, what am I trying to say here? What might you have been able to help this person understand, even though you were the one being attacked? You
Right.
get where I'm going here?
Yeah, I do. And I will tell you, fortunately for me, I have never been attacked either verbally or physically for
Thankfully.
being transgender. I will say though that I have been in situations, Linda, where I have walked into, let's say, a doctor's office, for example, and the person at the front desk assumes at the time that I am female and says things like ma'am or refers to me with pronouns like she and her. And I have had to educate that person. Now, when I interact with people that do those things, I don't take it as them being harsh or cruel, or they're trying to belittle me or be demeaning. I look at it as an educational opportunity, right? We're all learning as we go along, and I know that people make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, so usually I use it as an ability to educate that person. Hey, by the way, I just want you to know I'm actually a transgender male, and my pronouns are he and him. And I tell them, listen, from now on, what I would suggest when someone comes in to talk with you, never assume their gender. Go ahead and introduce yourself with your name and your pronouns and ask them if they don't mind sharing theirs and what they go by in terms of their name. It's just a matter of respect and breaking from the societal norms that we've always been used to. And that's just a teaching moment. It's not a, hey, you wronged me or you hurt me. It's a teaching moment.
Yeah. And it really is an educational process. I mean, I am learning so much the more I read about gender identity and sexuality and the difference between the two and all of the different terms. There are so many terms that we have now. Like when you were growing up, you didn't have the language to express what you knew to be your reality. They're calling me a girl, but I don't feel like a girl.
Right.
And so what does that mean? Well, now we have some language to help express that, which has got, that's a positive. At least, we've gotten that far, right?
Yes, very much so.
So you had also written another article that I read about the do's and don'ts of being an ally.
Right.
To the transgender community, or to the LGBTQ plus community. And you just talked about one of them, not assuming someone's pronouns and then just, but always coming with a modicum of respect, which every human being deserves. That goes first and foremost without saying. What are some of the other common maybe misconceptions that good-meaning people, well-intended people have, or things that they might do or say that could be said and expressed in a better way when it comes to being an ally for the transgender community?
Well, I think that one of the things that we do, and I've done it even recently, and I have to catch myself, is even in the workplace, right? When we have meetings with a group of people, we have this tendency, at least in the US, to open up a meeting with, hey guys, or, you're talking in the meeting and everything is yes guys, or that sounds good guys, or ladies and gentlemen. And we have to get away from that gender specific language and say things like everyone or folks or, something gender neutral. That is something that we really, really need to work on. Another is that, when I was raised, I was taught, you say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. You use, Mr., Mrs., things like that. There are, things now that we can use if we don't know someone's gender, like MX, it's pronounced mix. These are things that are very difficult to get used to because we've never done it.
Right.
But if we start getting into the habit of these things, it's much easier. The other thing I would say is people oftentimes have this good intentions around, let's make sure we're using this person's preferred pronouns. And people used to say that. It was acceptable to say preferred pronouns. Well, we're moving away from that now because guess what? It's not a preference, right? It's what my pronouns are. They're he and him. It's not what I prefer. It's who I am. And, just taking the time to ask someone if you don't understand something in a very polite manner, that's perfectly okay. I have always told people, if you want to ask me anything about my transition, anything involved with being transgender, as long as it's respectful, I will talk with you. I will help educate you. I will do whatever I can. The other thing is coming out. People have a tendency to think that it's their responsibility to out somebody, right? So if you talk to somebody at work in the workplace and you say, hey, I feel like I could talk to you about this. I'm a transgender man, and talk about your life, this, that, and the other. And this person, for some reason, thinks it's okay to tell another coworker, and it's not. It can be very dangerous to out someone without being given, that okay to do so. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to realize that people sometimes are out at work, not out at home, or vice versa. They're out to some people, not out to others. And I think the other thing I would say is, and people are getting better at this, is just don't be afraid to admit when you make a mistake. I make mistakes sometimes. And you have to just stop and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I used the wrong pronouns, or I said the wrong thing, or maybe I even asked an inappropriate question and I did not mean to. And don't do it again. And just, like you said earlier, you're learning, you're seeking out resources to be more educated about the trans community. And that is something in and of itself that a lot of people just don't take the time to do, or maybe they feel like people in the trans community should do for them. So I think it's just a matter of, being respectful and going out and trying to figure things out for yourself. And if you're not really sure, you're not really comfortable with what you read, then fine, go ask someone.
It's such important and valuable information that you're sharing there, because there are a lot of people who really do want to be allies. And, and I get this question as it relates to race,
Mm-hmm.
and there's so many similarities here, but the bottom
Absolutely.
line is, hello, people, we're all human beings, and we all deserve respect. We all deserve to be all of who we are. We were born
Mm-hmm.
the way we were born, as if we had any say in how we popped out of the womb, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so just allow us to be who we are and accept us for who we are. And let's just get to know each other and support each other as human beings. I mean, you would think that it would be that simple, but unfortunately it's not.
It's not. It's not.
And now we've got this spate of legislation that is sweeping across the country. And I know you've been very vocal and outspoken, particularly about the bathroom legislation. Talk to our audience about that from a personal perspective, because you have actually shared this publicly on social media about just the everyday stuff that we all do when we're out and about. You have to go to the bathroom, whether you're at work or you're at the mall shopping or in a restaurant or whatever it is. But for a transgender person, it's not quite as simple as just going to the bathroom. Please help us understand.
I think it comes down to that word that some of us don't like to talk about, is privileges, right? And I'll tell you a story. When I had just started my testosterone injections and was seeing my endocrinologist, and my wife and I at the time were living in Wilson, North Carolina. I don't know if you're familiar with Wilson.
I'm not.
But it's a small town. Not everyone, but a lot of closed-minded individuals. And when you're on testosterone, one of the things that you have to do is you have to get labs done frequently, just to make sure that you're not getting too much or too little. There's nothing going on with your blood in terms of how the testosterone is impacting you as an individual. And so I went in to the place in Wilson that I typically go to get my labs done. It was a doctor's office. And these people were always very nice to me. I never had any issues. This time when I go in and I sign in, the lady comes out and she says, "I'm sorry, honey, we no longer do labs here unless you're an actual patient of this doctor. You're going to have to go across town about 5-10 minutes to Walgreens into the LabCorp there and let the LabCorp handle your lab work from now on." In that moment, Linda, I thought I was literally, and I've never had one in my entire life, but I thought I was going to have a panic attack because my paperwork that my doctor gives me, of course, has to point out that I'm a transgender male, I'm on testosterone. So immediately upon finding this out, I'm standing there in this state of shock, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that I want to do this. Is it really important for me to get my blood work now, or can I wait? And I worked up the courage. I walked out to my truck. I got in the truck. I sat there. I drove myself across town. I'm waiting in the parking lot of this Walgreens. And I'm literally shaking out of fear because I know that I'm going to go into this place where I've never been before to get my labs done. And I don't know how I'm going to be perceived. Am I going to be ridiculed, made fun of? Is the person going to, try to hurt me when they stick the needle in my arm because I'm a transgender man?
Yeah.
And so I finally go in. And I was lucky. The lady was very nice. She talked to me about her kids. We had a great conversation, very gentle, just fantastic experience there. But those are the types of things. The other day, I said to my wife, I need a haircut. I need to find a new place to get a haircut. And I go online, and without even thinking, I type in transgender-friendly barbershops and salons. And I stopped in that moment and thought, I shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, cisgendered people don't have to do that. They just type in top salons are in my area and they find one and they go. Whereas for transgender people, it's not the same. You're always looking for that trans-friendly place, and sometimes you can't find it. My doctor recently, my endocrinologist, I wanted to find a new primary care doctor. And so I thought, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to her because she's trans friendly. She's my endocrinologist. She can put me in touch with a trans friendly primary care doctor. But these are things that we go through on a regular basis that really should be easy. Mm-hmm. And it's a privilege for a cisgender person because they can just go out and go anywhere and not worry about it. But for us, something as simple as getting your hair cut. You need to make sure that you're safe, that you're accepted, that people are okay with it. And I mean, do I pass for a cisgender male? Most often, absolutely. But I also don't want to hide who I am.
Right, right. So where are you in your surgeries? Are you finished? Are you where you need to be?
It's funny that you ask because I feel like I continuously have this conversation with myself and with my surgeon. So I had my first surgery, Linda, back in September of 2020. It feels much longer ago, but I had that first surgery, the gender affirming top surgery. And then I had the necrosis. For a while there after that, I thought I had edema of the abdomen. So I went to Beth Israel Hospital in Boston for a week, and they had to do some horrible tests on me where they literally stuck needles in between all of my fingers, all of my toes. It was horrible. And since that time, I have been fortunate to have been provided with some great doctors. And a friend of mine actually said to me, listen, I've got this surgeon who is from South Africa, and they're very well known in the trans community for plastic surgeries. Why don't you go see him and see what he says? So I did go see him, and he just finished on the 21st my second procedure that he's done for me. And I went to see him yesterday for follow-up. And I literally, I think, almost broke down in tears shaking this man's hand because he showed me pictures of what I started with all the necrosis and where I am now. And it's like night and day. And I literally said to him, you've changed my life. You know, you've made me feel like a whole person again. And so he hopes, and so do I, that there are no more surgeries at this point. I go back to see him in 2 months, but he seems really confident. He was so happy yesterday. He told me I was healing faster and better than he could ever imagine, and that he feels like in a few more months I'm going to be as good as new.
That's just the most wonderful news, Liam. I'm so happy for you, and you look well. You look happy. How is life for you now? How are you feeling about just being Liam?
You know, I feel really good. I think the only regret that I sometimes have is that I didn't come out earlier. right? I wonder sometimes how many other lives I might have impacted if I had come out earlier. How things may have been a little bit different for myself as well as other individuals. Because for me, that's the reason that I do what I do now, and being vocal and being, out there on social media and blogging and doing podcasts and events that I do is I want the transgender youth who are growing up in the world to know that no matter what legislation is passed, no matter what bills are introduced, they're always going to have people that love them and support them and fight for them. And they're going to have a better world to live in, even if it means the people now that are going through all of this hate-filled legislation are having to fight every single day. We just want it to be better for the young people that are growing up.
For the young Liams out there, for sure.
Absolutely.
You indicated at one point in one of your writings that I read that when you came out, or at some point in this process, that you became estranged from your family, that they rejected you. Where is that situation now?
So, I've never had a relationship with my mother at all. That's just been one of those things that's just been completely almost null and void my entire childhood and beyond.
So sorry to hear that.
So, but you know what, Linda, my grandmother raised me from the time I was 18 months old, and I got to tell you, she was one of the most phenomenal, strongest, bravest, sweetest, most sincere individuals. I mean, she's my angel. She always will be. Unfortunately, she passed away with Alzheimer's years and years ago. But she's always with me, right? She's always whispering in my ear when I need her. My father and I have had a pretty good relationship off and on through the years, and it took him a while to sort of accept when I was going through trying to figure out who I was with, the sexual orientation at the time. So he finally got to the point where he accepted that. And then in 2020, when I decided to let him know about me transitioning to a man, he had nothing to say. Absolutely nothing. He has not spoken to me. He is well aware of the complications that I've had from my surgeries. He's well aware of everything that I've been through in terms of my health after the first surgery. And he wants nothing to do with me. My brother has nothing to do with me. I have two sisters that are very supportive. I have two cousins that are very supportive. But I think I would have to say my wife's family has been much more supportive. They have truly accepted me for being Liam. It took some time, obviously, for them to get used to the new name and the new pronouns, and they had to work on it. I laugh and joke with my mother-in-law sometimes because she'll still slip up. I mean, she's much older, and I pick on her because she catches herself and she apologizes. But I'll tell her, I'm gonna make you put a quarter in a jar every time you mess up. But they've been very supportive. Our son and daughter have been super supportive. It's my daughter will correct someone in a heartbeat if they say something that's incorrect in terms of my pronouns or my name or referring to anything that might be conceived as negative. And then outside of that, it does make me sad, I guess, that my father just chooses, because it's a choice, he chooses not to accept it. But at the same time, I have found so many people in my life, whether it's colleagues at work or friends of mine, who have just been so supportive. I mean, when I had my first surgery, Linda, I think I had about 10 pages of just messages from coworkers and friends being so supportive, and we're so proud of you, we're here with you, we support you, what you're doing is brave, and we love you. And so I think it's about the family we choose, not the family we're born into. And so I feel like I have a huge family, and they're all supportive. I can reach out to them anytime. And so until the day that my father comes around, if he ever does, I've got people that I know that are rooting for me always.
Well, you can add me to that list because I am rooting for you. And I just really, really thank you for being so open and transparent and honest about who you are and what you are going through, just to live and stand in your truth. And that's all any of us really, really wants to do, is to just be accepted for who we are. So
that's it. That is it.
That is it. Liam, it has been an honor, my friend. Thank you so very much. You're a friend of the Our Voices Matter podcast community and family, and you're always welcome here. And we want to keep up with you and continue to root for you. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Linda, thank you. And I will always support you and your podcast. I love what you do. I think you're just an amazing human being. And I can't tell you how much it means to me to have you in my corner.
Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend. Be well. Thanks so much for having the courage to listen to Liam's story. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next time. Thanks again to our sponsor, BMW of West Houston. There's a special offer for members of the Our Voices Matter podcast community. Just click the link in the show notes, bmwwest.com.